What's going on, everyone? We're continuing with the VADER build. As you can see, we're farther behind than we were at the end of the last video on this build. I had to take it back apart, and I meant to show this before I even started on anything, but I forgot to cut out this little section here, so that's where, you know, the top of the reservoir would be, and that's kind of where I want the fill and drain port, so I need to cut a little bit of that out. I'll need to do the same eventually here, but I want to figure out exactly what kind of fittings I'm using, and I kind of want this one to just be sort of a snug fit. I obviously don't want to just cut a giant hole there. I also needed to drill out a little bit where the bolts go through the bracket on this water block for some reason. I guess I have it this way or something, and the orientation was different. Anyway, we got that back in. I also took this one off to switch the fittings on here, because I'd rather do that with the water block off. And yeah, so I think what I'm settling on as our loop is obviously reservoir here, pump right into this radiator, and then it'll pump out of this one right into this block, and then from this block it'll go straight into this radiator right here, come out this side and go right into this block, and then from here we're going to come up and go straight back into the bottom of the reservoir. And then the top of the reservoir, like I said, will have the fill drain port there, and then we can put like our temperature sensor on this side of the radiator, or if it'll fit on that side maybe. But anyway, that's our loop today. I've already explained a lot of stuff of what we're doing. I have a pretty good plan, pretty confident on what I need to do. So first things first, let's get this water block on. Alright, now let's get it back in the metal casing. Alright, got that in place. Let's put our ring of light board on. Before I put any radiators in, I need to do the wiring. So I decided I'm just going to pull from here to power our board that all of the fans will plug into. And for 12 volts, we'll go ahead and pull from the DVD drive. So we'll have the 5 from there, 12 volts from here. So I need to get a DVD cable. Let's go ahead and cut it up and make it extension. I think I want to have it probably back over here somewhere, so we could just have all the cables run under here. That's kind of hidden underneath the temperature display. So let's do that next. Alright, got that cable made. Going from the DVD to a 3-pin for the pump. And then now we need to make cable to go from this 3-pin to our board splitter. I got that one done. I actually used the cable that came with the splitter there. Just cut that off and put this one on there. Like I mentioned before, got to switch the positive and negative. But now this is 5 volts, and that can split between all the fans. So let's go ahead and put these wires in, this PCB or splitter, and then we can go ahead and put the radiator in on this side. Alright, got both of these plugged in. This one's routed over here, and this one routed over to our PCB. I might need to make some kind of custom mount to have it on an angle, that way I have enough room to plug everything in. But yeah, next up, we're going to go ahead and install this radiator. I found some screws here that will fit perfectly in some of the mounting holes there through these holes that are already in the side. So let me go ahead and put the fans on. It'll be hard to do once this is in place, and then we will install this. Got the dual 40mm radiator installed. See, I had this tubing on. I slid in, then set the radiator in, put the 4 screws in on this side, which is plenty to hold it nice and sturdy. I left the plug out over here so that I can plug the temperature sensor in there. Now this hole back here actually lines up perfectly with this port as well. I may take that off and put a regular style port on there, and that could just be another way to, you could take the hard drive off and access this. Well, if I cut another hole in the back of this, you could access that to help drain or fill the system up 2 different ways, I guess. But since it's there, I may just put a cap on there and leave it as an extra little access point there. But next up, we need to, you can see I got these wires for the fan kind of gone around here. Luckily, all these cables for these fans are like a clear color, so it shouldn't be too much of an eyesore, but we'll see if we can find the best way to route this so that it's all hidden. We might go around this way. Anyway, let's go ahead and put the second radiator in. I think I'm going to have to take the fans off, slide the radiator in place, and then put the fans on. Because of the wiring here, it's not going to want to slide through. The fans fit through this gap absolutely perfectly with no error, so the wires are in the way. So let's take these off, slide that radiator in, and then should be ready to start putting in the reservoir and pump. We got this one in place. Here, might need to angle it downwards just a little bit more. I'm going to put the back plate underneath here, since it already has this cut out exactly where I need it, just to get this lined up perfectly. Now it is a really snug fit. Probably going to throw a little bit of hot glue around the inside just to make sure it doesn't move out of place. You can see we're as close as we can up here with that tubing without touching the fan. We've got all of our fan cables run underneath here. And then we've got our connector cable run up here into our plate. You can see all of our connectors are right here. We can just plug them all in. And then this is our 12-volt one here for our pump, which should be the next step. But I think while this is out of the way, we're going to do a little bit more of the tubing. We can go ahead and connect from here to our radiator. We can connect from that part of the radiator to here. And we can make this connection across here. And then when we get the pump in place, all we got to do is connect that pump to this radiator and connect the out of this block back into the bottom of the reservoir. So yeah, next up, let's start putting in some fittings and tubing, and we'll go from there. But basically I have this on here because I'm trying to see if having this situation here is going to be too tall. Luckily that's right where the fan is, and it looks like that will not interfere at all, because the fan is obviously not going to be any lower than the top of this surface here. So it looks like we're good to go there. So I know I said I was going to put some tubing on, and I didn't really do any of that yet. But I started messing with the pump and reservoir, so I know the orientation, which end caps I need. I only have one end cap with a triple port, one with dual, and a couple with singles. I do have copper and silver nickel plated ones that have multiple ports as well, but obviously I don't want that in here. I want the black, plus the copper and silver ones are incredibly heavy. So at this point I don't want to try and add too much more weight with this big copper radiator, this big copper radiator, these copper plates on our water blocks. The acrylic on the reservoir has some weight to it, as well as the pump. But anyway, so I think this is looks like it's good here. So I had to put a smaller barb on this one because the barbs on this radiator are smaller than what I'm kind of using here. This is like 5/16, I believe. It depends on the inner diameter of the tubing as well, and this red tubing is just too big to go over these. I mean, they obviously go over it fine, but there's no, I mean, it's not a tight fit at all, and I wouldn't trust any hose clamp to be tight enough for that. So, swapped out that barb here. This is a slightly smaller one, and I'm going to have to put a little bit of this tubing just to go from there to there. Otherwise, well, I'll have to do the same thing from here to the pump as well. You shouldn't really see that tubing though, that's underneath the fan. Otherwise, everything else, red here, red to here, red to here, and that's pretty much all the tubing. So that's where we are at. I'm probably going to leave this video here. I've been trying to keep these a little bit shorter while still explaining everything. I know a lot of this stuff is me talking, explaining, but it's kind of evolved to that after me putting out videos of something and just getting non-stop questions on how I did something, or misinterpretation on how much work this actually takes and skill and whatnot. So just have to show everything that goes into these builds can appreciate the final build that much more. But anyway, I'm gonna, in the meantime, mess with more of the tubing here, and just kind of get further along, and hopefully the next video is the same that we did here, which is kind of a assembly and test. We'll probably try distilled water first, just make sure there's no leaks or anything, and then, you know, make a list of final details and things I need to go back and work on, kind of like we did here. This one has a pretty good list to work on, as well as extra things that involves this, and I'll explain, and yeah. So I'm hoping on this one, though, there's not going to be a really long list of final details. I'm doing everything I can to make sure everything's clean and done, and hopefully this is the final assembly. But yeah. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. I'm trying to do one video a day until these guys are done. And like, comment, subscribe. See you in the next video.